What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Coffee Q&A, your daily source for coffee talk and questions and answers and I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So how's it going? I'm your host, Jay. Welcome back to the show. We're here every weekday, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. What's going on? How y'all doing? It's Monday, April 22nd, and I'm back from my trip across the country. So if you haven't been following us and just joining us for the first time, I spent the last 10 days on the road, first to Chicago for the Specialty Coffee Association's Expo, and then I went to Las Vegas to attend the National Association of Broadcasters Expo, and then after that I went up to Salt Lake City to go visit a place called Cafe de Bola, and had a really great time. Got to see a lot of industry friends and friends from across the YouTube spectrum that I know, and it's been a good time. But I did bring back some stuff from the shows, and I thought that I'd share with him here with you guys. Well, good morning, man. Good to see you. How you doing today? How you doing? So today we've got this coffee. I ran into a friend of mine, David, from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and he owns a place called Rogue Wave Coffee Roasters. They're up in Edmonton, and I've been to Edmonton a few times, but all of them were in the 90s when I lived a different life doing paintball semi-professionally, strangely enough. And I wasn't into coffee back then. I didn't know anything about coffee, but one of the interesting things that we were in Edmonton, it was July of like 1994 or maybe 1993. We're there, and I remember we're hanging outside on one of those commercial high streets having, I don't know, dinner, drinks, whatever it was. We're sitting around, and I'm thinking, God, the daylight looks pretty light. And I'm thinking, to me, I was like, what is it, like 8 o'clock? You know, summertime, 8 o'clock here on the East Coast is still fairly daylight. And my friend looked at his watch. He's like, oh, no, dude, it's 11:30. And I was like, 11:30? Holy smokes. You know, so Edmonton's northern enough so that, you know, you will, it has a lot more daylight than we do here on the East Coast. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. But I've just been lucky that I've had opportunities to go to different places, and I've always tried to be the person that did not say no to those opportunities. But anyway, so Edmonton's beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go, it's really a pretty town, very small town, but they have one of the largest malls in North America, a place called the West Edmonton Mall. And until they built Mall of America in Minnesota, I think this was the largest mall in North America, or maybe even the world. They have a roller coaster and an amusement park in the mall. Really cool. Like, you know, you go to the first drop is really high, of course, right? And it actually exceeds the roof line of the main building. So they actually built a little outcropping so that you would go up into it and then drop. Kind of cool. But anyway, so I'm not sure when Rogue Wave opened first, but, you know, I went to him for a long time. And so he was like, hey, man, I want to give you some coffee. And I was like, well, thanks. And so what he gave me this thing called the Ethiopia. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. Teshome Gemechu. This is from the Sidamo region of Ethiopia. And Lot 2 is a designation they have. I'm not sure what that designation means. It's just, you know, the way that different growers or co-ops, and this is more of a co-op, my understanding. So they are pulling coffees from the Sidamo region together from a variety of smallholder farmers. And, you know, the farmers a lot of the farms in Ethiopia tend to be very small, maybe a half a hectare, maybe a hectare at the most. So the production from each individual farmer is very small. So a lot of times they'll form co-ops in order to, you know, aggregate the coffees and sell them. And a lot of times, I'm not really sure on this particular one, this place called Teshome Gemechu. I think that it is. Actually, it's not called that. It's called. It's the title I put on the Dedomi Ruku. Is that right? Oh no, that's the next one. I'm sorry. The Teshome Gemechu is the one. This one is a lot of them they're smallholder farmers. They come together. They sell their cherries to the co-op, and the co-op processes them. I'm not sure if this is how that happens, but this one has, actually, here's the thing. We're very familiar with Arabica, Robusta, Excelso, things like that, Liberica. In Ethiopia, it's mostly Arabica. And since Ethiopia has been making coffee since the dawn of time, or at least the dawn of coffee, there have been a lot of variations, right? The variations, aberrations from each of the strains. So Ethiopia has tremendous varieties of varieties. Yeah, variety of varieties. So, like on this one, you'll see here on their packaging, it says the varieties that are here are Druga and Wolisho, and these are all different variants of Arabica that have naturally sprung. A lot of times you're going to see from Ethiopian producers, they're just going to say Ethiopian heirloom because they haven't really taken the time to figure out what strain of Arabica those coffees are. And there's a reason for that. A lot of times it's it's expensive to actually send product to a lab to try to break it down and figure out what it is. And then there's just so many aberrations in coffee varieties that it's very difficult for anyone to keep track of it all, especially in Ethiopia where it's all just kind of change. So it just makes it more difficult. Good morning, Michael. How are you? And so this one comes from 1,900 to 2,200 meters above sea level, and it's a wash coffee. And if you're not too familiar with wash coffees are basically the basic process is that you take the coffees that are fully ripened, the whole cherry, you depulp them, which means that you separate the two beans that are inside the cherry from the husk, separate those two. Those little beans are covered with what we call mucilage, just pulpy matter that if you think of like Thompson grapes, right, it's kind of that pulpy matter, just a thin layer coating the green bean. And then those are put into a water bath for fermentation. And that fermentation starts because of natural yeasts that are just floating around. And that fermentation eats up the sugars that are in the mucilage, that essentially removes the mucilage from the bean. So that takes about 16 to 24 hours, depending on where they are, depending on temperature. And, they rake it out and then they take it and they put them on these big, huge drying patios, typically concrete patios, to lie out in the sun, and they rake them. They rake the green beans, the beans, for about, they rake them probably maybe once every hour, once every couple hours, depending on the process. And that takes about 14 to 15 days for it to fully dry. So when you're talking about going from, I think moisture content of fresh coffee is somewhere around 40% humidity, moisture. And then you're really trying to bring it down to somewhere between 9.5 to 11.5% moisture. And what that means is that you're trying to bring that down. You're trying to bring it and you're trying to bring it on a gradual, natural level, right? Now, in many countries, in many production places, they can put them into big dryers. So basically, you'll take those coffees and put them into these big steel drums. I mean, we're talking, some of them are massive, like tens of thousands of pounds. You put in there and it slowly heats through flame and it dries out the coffee. Now, depending on how much heat you're applying, it can dry it more rapidly or slower, and that can affect the shelf stability of the coffee over the long term, right? The faster you go, the potentially more you kind of damage it. And also, that can hasten the decay. So you'll have coffees that'll have, you have a nice flavor, and then at some point it will start to decline. Some coffees, depending on how they're handled, maybe they have too much moisture, maybe the moisture is driven too fast out, and there's a variety of ways that this can happen. But however it's handled, it can go like this and then a lot faster. And so the game with a lot of coffee roasters is to utilize your coffee when it's here and before it drops. And if it starts to drop, you want to get rid of it. For the most part, right? Now, that's just all that. So this coffee probably took about 15 days to dry, and I'm sure this is very nice quality. I haven't opened it yet. As you can see, it's all brand new, unopened. So let's get into it. We're going to get into it right now. So they've got these nice stand-up bags, right? Stand-up bags. Very nice, very pretty. I like the artwork. And then you've got this thing, you can just tear it. But you know what? I'll be honest with you. There is the OCD of me that hates tearing it. And it just can tear unevenly and just not look pretty. Ooh, there's some very nice aromatics coming out of the cut. Ooh, very, very like attractive, warm notes. Okay, let's get our monkey pod here. Keone, aloha to you, man. Welcome to the show. How's it going there? Let's have a look at our beans. This is about 100 grams, I think. So as you can see, these beans it's a blend, like I said, of something called Druga and Wolisho varietals of Arabica. And as you can see, the beans are rather small. They actually look, on my monitor here, they look darker than they look in person, right? To me, these are relatively light. On the camera, it looks more medium. These have a definite lighter roast to it. But wow, really pretty fragrance. I mean, I'm really liking that. So they're saying that we're going to have peach, blueberry, floral, and pear. So very fruity. I don't know if I would say that. Maybe some peach, maybe some pear, but whatever it is, it's actually really attractive, right? Sometimes I just think of it less on like, let's try to figure out like what are the exact descriptions, but more just like, is it appealing? Is it enjoyable? And I think this is the kind of coffee you smell the fragrance, and you're like, oh my gosh, this smells delicious. Like, I'm interested. I want to try it. I think that's enough, right? Craig says, Rogue Wave is one of my regular. Oh, yeah. They're great guys up there, man. I haven't seen David in quite a while, though, but I'm glad to have seen him. All right, so let's do some brewing here. Let's get our scale here. This is our lovely Temu scale that I was able to play around a little bit with the Akira Koki scale while I was in Salt Lake City. $150, I think it is. Really nice, actually. I think maybe I'll get one of those for the shop here. Okay, we're going to make our normal coffee, 24 grams. All right, 24.3. Let's put this away now. Gosh, really, it's only 50 grams. Gosh, I feel like now I'm scared to drink more of it because I'm going to run out. But you know what? Let's just keep brewing because we need to use coffee in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, there we are. Let's get our trusty what do we call this? The Barazza Virtuoso. I probably should get a new one, shouldn't I? I mean, this is kind of old. Old but not busted. Okay, let's see here. 60 grams. Okay, I have left it from the setting that we had prior, and I think that was a good setting. So let's try that. I just ordered a cool item yesterday. And I don't know if you do a lot of cooking at home yourselves, but you know what? The other week I bought this, right? This little like cheap flame gun from Temu, which is like $6, and it's very lightweight, but it seems just as good as a lot of the ones you buy from. There's a Japanese company that makes something like this, very nice quality, good for kitchen use. But there's a guy that produces something called the Searzall, Searzall. His name is Dave Arnold. I don't know him personally, but I know of him. A lot of my friends in culinary, some of them are friends with him, so there's some connection. But he runs a podcast that I listen to called Cooking Issues, and if you like cooking, it's really a good one, especially if you like cooking and have an interest in cooking stuff at the professional level, he's a really interesting podcast to listen to. But he just mentioned on his podcast last week. When I was driving, he's like, we have more Searsall Pros left, and Searsall are these big, like you attach them to a MAP gas canister, and it's this torch thing, so it just gives you this even torching. And I was like, oh, I've always wanted the regular Searsall, but he was like, yeah, we still have some more Searsall Pros. I was like, oh. And when I came home on Saturday, I was like, that's what I'm going to order. All right, so we've got our coffee here. I'm going to bring that Searsall. I'll show you what it does soon, whenever it comes in. You know, now that it's ground, so whole bean, it has this really interesting kind of free, luxuriant, like fruity, like attractive fragrance. Maybe I'm just getting used to it. Now, ground, I don't know, I just smelled this. It doesn't have the same aromatic that it did a moment ago, but it has more. But now that it's ground, it kind of comes up with this unctuousness, this savoriness. That's interesting. All right, let's get our origami filters, because we're going to go back to our what's becoming my favorite brewer right now is the origami brewer. I'm quite enjoying this brewer. It's very interesting. Is it interesting? I don't know. Is it interesting? All right, so let's get our filter open here. I really do like these filters. I'm not sure why I like them. I just like them at the moment. I was thinking about buying one of those April brewers. So I went to the April booth, or the brewing booth at SCA. I went on the last day, right when they were closing. I asked the lady, so how much are your brewers? You know, if you want to get rid of your stuff, offer a discount. But she was like, oh, it's $47.50. I was like, $47.50, $50 for an April brewer. Is that worth it? And I get it. I think these in America are $50, right? But I'm just like, $50. Am I going to get performance out of that thing for 50? I don't know. I felt cheap. I'm like, you want to? If I got, because I'm also thinking that if I'm buying it, then I got to travel with it now for the next week and a half. And I'm like, I don't really want to travel with anything. I'm trying to reduce my traveling weight. And I was like, forget it. I'm not buying any of that. All right. So here we've got our coffee. It's in there. Let me just pump up the heat one more time. Can we zoom in a little bit more? Okay, that's the max zoom. Okay, scale's ready. Getting the kettle ready here. So here's our kettle, our Hario Bono kettle. Why am I using the Hario Bono? Because I'm old school and an old curmudgeon, and I hate change. All right, take this off the boil. It's a rolling boil. All right. So that'll help us a little bit with the temperature differentiation. And let's get rolling with it. I'm going to do a little bit of pulsing. So 26 grams. There always seems to be, it always starts to flow out of the bottom once it reaches weight equilibrium with the weight of the coffee. $50 grams. Like I actually would never have thought about the April brewer. Like I never really think about it, right? Like I don't really see, 78 point, we're a little bit behind. I don't really think too much about all the extra brewers, right? But what happened was I was on the show floor and one of our viewers, Nick Boyle, came up to me and he's like, hey man, I watch your videos and I think you're wrong. And I was like, Well, right on. I like that. I like that. He's like, I hope you're not offended. Like, actually, I'm not. Maybe some of the other guys should be offended. I'm actually not. And he's like, I think there's a difference between brewers. Because I guess I said somewhere on the way that there's not much difference between brewers. I mean, there's going to be some difference, but for the most part, I don't worry about like differences. Like if you have an origami, are you missing out because you don't have an April or you don't have the W60? I don't think so. Now, will there be differences? Sure, because like even when we're training our baristas at the shops, and why we offer 7 different brewing methods at Spro is that, or at least the old version of Spro, is because each one will have an impact, right? It's just like chicken. If you take chicken and you fry it, it's going to taste like chicken, but it's going to be different than the chicken that you braise or boil, or if you cook like in a soup. The way that chicken tastes is going to be different. Roasted chicken is different than fried. Like sometimes you want that roasted chicken. Other times you want fried chicken. And to me, that's the differences between the different brewing methods. But is one inherently better than the other? I don't think so. It kind of depends more on your mood. So here, 2 minutes, 200 grams, 2 minutes where I'm talking too much again and not paying close enough attention. This is the problem when you're talking and you're doing something else when you're brewing coffee because you're just losing your train of thought. So almost 3 minutes. We should be closer to 300 by now. Part of this is the grind, maybe a little bit tight. Also, my lack of attention to pouring is another factor. Michael says, I could mail you mine to try. I didn't have much luck with the... No, thank you. I appreciate it. You don't have to do that. I mean, it's one of those things where like, I'll get around to it eventually. Oh yeah, we are definitely behind the curve here. Look at that, 275. Too much talking. Too much vala'au. Right there, Keone. For those of you who are not understanding, vala'au means a lot. It means basically talking, like you're just talking too much, which is what I tend to do on these shows. Just talk too much. Of course, not much you can. Well, I could probably do one of those live streams where people are just silent. Okay, 302, 340. So on the longer side. And now I'm rushing. I am rushing the pour here. So next time I brew this, I'm going to have to go a little bit coarser than the medium setting here. Because I would have to say this is not just my poor pouring technique, but also a factor of it being perhaps too fine. 403, 325. We're still trying to get to 350. Come on, baby. $350.9. There we go. Good. Keone says that the dripper that I saw, the biggest difference is the Cafe Deep 27. It did bring out a lot more sweetness. Oh, okay, we'll have to try that. I mean, eventually I'll get more of these brewers. We'll try them out. All right. Now we're done. 4 minutes, 45 seconds. What I wish there was a ways that you could just stop the dripping. See how it's dripping? Like, it just drips in my phone. Maybe I'll just grab this little cup here. All right, there it is. Our elixir. I follow enough. Usually that means you're just too much. That's too much. All right, right on. All right, let's have a look here. Let's do a little pouring. So it's a pretty brew. Look at that. How does that look? That looks pretty clear. Rather nice. All right, let's. My fingers are burning. That unctuousness has given way now to a little bit more milk chocolate. maybe less milk and a little bit dark. Like instead of like 20%, 25% milk chocolate or cacao milk chocolate, more like 35 to 40% cacao. Definitely some chocolatey characters. I'm getting kind of cherry. Like the description says blueberry. I would think more cherry than blueberry right now. There's also supposed to be notes of peach, floral, and pear. I don't. Maybe on the finish, there's a little bit of that. Okay, so you know when you get like a peach that's like a southern yellow peach, you know the ones that kind of look more orange with a little bit of red on them. When you're eating those and they're really ripe, like and really fresh, you're eating those, and there's that light acidity to them. There's a little bit of that kind of character that's on the finish. Yeah, definitely that peachy brightness is kind of on the top. Like if this is your tongue, right? This the tip, it's really right about there. That's interesting. Still a light coffee, right? Like light, brighter. As it's cooling, maybe some more pear-ish kind of notes. Maybe a little bit of melon, honeydew melon. Hmm. Oh, interesting. Interesting. It's definitely a brighter, lighter coffee. I'm thinking right at the moment about like comparing it to some of my favorite coffees. One of my favorite coffees is the Edido Misty Valley from 2007. That's an Ethiopian coffee. That crop of coffee to me was one of the most mentally perfect coffees that I've ever had. Body, richness, not very light. Like this is a lighter bodied coffee, but incredibly apparent blueberry fruit. And I really haven't had coffees like that in a very long time. Maybe since that time where the blueberry fruit is so forward, like almost like you're eating blueberry muffins. Really good sweetness, good body. Like these are always, and I think maybe this is just the style of the times, right? We want fruitier coffees, but we're always trying to roast them light to that the body is lighter, it's very thin, it's very open. Pleasant drinking coffee. And someone was talking about this the other just while I was at the show. We were talking a bunch of coffee guys that I know, and they're like, I think the problem today is that roasters are roasting for roasters. And I was like, what? What do you mean? He's like, I mean, think about what we all taste, and the roast profiles and the flavors that you're getting. These are coffees that like roasters might be excited about. Right? Like how many people do you and they're like, how many people have you met that like try the geisha and they're like, it tastes like tea? And I'm like, well, most people. And he's like, yeah, well, what good is that? And I get what he's saying because one of my good friends back, he actually lives in Bangkok now. He's like, years ago, it's like maybe 10 years ago, he got the geisha and he was trying. He's like, I hate it. I was like, really? And I was like, yeah, man. If I want tea, if I want a coffee that tastes like tea, I'm just gonna buy tea. And I was like, it's a good point. And so, one of my buddy was like talking about how, like, think about it. Most roasters are roasting for the roasters to impress other coffee people rather than impress the people. And like, we always talk about a lot of highfalutin ideals like in coffee, like baristas and all these people talk about like, especially with and I'm sure this is happening at the guest level, right? Telling you that this is amazing coffee because it's very floral, it's very tea-like, it's very this, it's very that, it's very fruity, and just like it's one of those things that I wonder, like, are people saying it's awesome and they're enjoying it because they really are enjoying it, or because they're being told they should be enjoying it? I don't know. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. But this is very nice. And it was gifted to me, so thank you, David. I really appreciate it. But I often wonder, like, what would I drink this with? Right, so this is light, it's floral, it's got fruitiness, it's got some geisha-esque characteristics to it, right? So, it's definitely what we would consider to be a lovely coffee. But what do you drink with it? What do you consume with it? Is it meant to be paired with something, or is it meant to be just drank by itself? I don't know. I wonder if this is something. The coffees that we're producing nowadays in the world are really meant to just be drank by themselves without accompaniment, because what goes well with it without clashing with it. And I don't know how much this coffee is. I do have a link to it in the description. I forgot to check, but especially if you're spending a lot of money on coffee, how do you pair it correctly? Like if I buy a bottle of, let's say I buy the bottle of the Chateau de Beaucastel, $75 to who knows how much more per bottle. Do I drink that by itself, or do I find something? What am I going to drink that with? And I don't want to drink it with something that's, you know, crappy quality or just not of like a not well thought out thing. I want to drink it with something that's nice and that it pairs well. It makes sense and is congruent for the experience. I don't know. I have to think more on this, because as we move forward with the new shop, I have to think about how we're going to present coffees, what we're going to do. One of the nice things about this trip is I was able to visit some shops and see new product that I think we might incorporate, or I'm interested to see if it will incorporate into the space. One of the things I really saw that I'm going to include a video on the main channel here is something called the Vac Brew 2. And it's a device that this Young Ro is the guy's name. He's a Chinese guy and has almost no traction in the industry, no traction on YouTube, very little traction on YouTube, pretty much non-existent on Google. But I thought his brewer was kind of interesting. And I think I talked about it on one of the live streams where it's basically this vacuum style cold brewer that ideally you will heat the lower vessel. If you can imagine the siphon, right? Here's my not very clean siphon. But if you can imagine the siphon, what you do is that it's somewhat similar construction. We're going to brew with this actually on a Wednesday to brew Wednesday's coffee. So I'm going to go over with you then how we make siphon, and I will clean this before we get to that day. Anyway, the idea is that you're going to take your lower chamber, and it's a two-chamber brewing system, and you'll put a little bit of water. You'll heat that water to boiling, and I mean just a little bit of water, maybe 5% of the volume. Your coffee is then in an apparatus similar to this, but there's a stem here, and I don't know how it works, but there's also the upper chamber. It has your water, and your coffee's here, your water's here, and I think there's even ice. And after after it boils, you pull it from the heat, and then you put the top chamber up, and that creates a vacuum that pulls it. I think it pulls it up, or maybe it pulls it down. It does. I haven't really seen it in action. There is a video online. I didn't really pay that close attention to it, but I met the guy Young Ro on the show floor, and I just thought it was an interesting method of brewing coffee. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just go buy one and play with it and see how it does. So maybe that's coming up soon. I got to get in touch with him this week. All right. Well, so here we are, the Vogue Wave, Ethiopia Teshome Gemechu. This is going to be Ethiopia week. Tomorrow's coffee is going to be from Honduras, from one of my friends, Mary Portillo. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be brewing with the siphon and bring up another Ethiopia that I got from John Piquet at Cafe de Bola. And that should be quite interesting. Actually, I have to do the siphon because I have to try to do justice to his method of brewing coffee. Otherwise, I'm just another charlatan making coffee. All right, so that's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, as always. So hope you have a great day out there. And take care in New York, in Ottawa, in Thailand, and Houston, and wherever you may be. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Malama to you, Q&A.